The chamber lights dimmed as the central dais flared to life with pale blue holographic fire. Representatives from over 100 species leaned forward in their seats, their various bodies twitching, pulsing, or adjusting their translator implants. As the voice of the Council's automated herald announced, the floor recognizes General Kelzer of the Arxarian Dominion. A low, resonant chitter filled the hall as the General's towering figure shimmered into view atop the main platform. He stood over 3 meters tall, his exoskeleton an obsidian lattice threaded with crimson bioluminescence. Razor mandibles clicked as he spoke, his voice filtered into Galactic Standard, through a translator that barely concealed the contempt behind his words. The time for tolerance has ended. A hush fell over the council. Kelzer scanned the chamber with faceted, jet-black eyes. For centuries, the Arxarian Dominion has obeyed the rules of this chamber. We have watched as parasites infested space that did not belong to them. We have held our tongues while lesser species stumbled through technologies they did not understand, but no more. He raised a segmented limb toward the far edge of the chamber where the human delegation sat. Humanity, a mutation, an aberration, a virus that infects whatever world it touches. You spread through the stars with no regard for law, lineage, or legacy. You occupy 10 systems that lie within Arxarian claim space. You have ignored every diplomatic petition. You have trespassed on sacred territory. Now you will face justice. From her place at the human desk, Ambassador Thalia Reeve stood slowly. She was not tall, not loud, and certainly not armored in biometal like the general. Her clothes were simple midnight navy fabric with a single silver pin at the collar, but her posture was precise, uncheckable. Her voice, when it came, was calm and unwavering. General Kelzer, the United Terran Coalition has responded to every formal request issued by your Dominion. We have offered compromise, mediation, resource sharing, cultural exchange. You refused every offer and responded with blockades and sabotage. You polluted holy ground, Kelzer hissed, mandibles snapping. And now your infection must be burned out. Thalia's eyes darkened, just slightly, but she did not flinch. You speak of extermination in a room built for peace. You've declared war without provocation. We have declared cleansing. You have 72 standard hours to surrender all claimed systems. Every human ship must withdraw to Sol. Your colonies will be dismantled. Your people relocated. Should you refuse, the Arxarian fleet will commence full-spectrum cleansing operations. The chamber exploded into sound. Gasps, chimes, roars, and clicking alarms. The Vorathi buzzed in alarm. The Altarians stood, whispering in their fluidic tongue. Even the implacable Thruntal rustled like stone in an avalanche. On the human side, Thalia didn't move. General Kelzer's hologram leaned forward until his image loomed just meters above the human table. If you resist, we will sterilize every human world. You will become a memory, a warning to others. And with that, the image vanished. The lights returned. The chamber was in chaos, but Thalia remained still. From a secure channel embedded in her chair, she tapped 3 keys. The transmission reached deep into the dark corners of human space beyond known relays, into secure relays behind decoy comsats and quiet moons. A single burst signal was sent. On the outer edges of the Vega reaches, Captain Elias Rains. Eyes opened. The bridge of the patrol ship Argent Dawn was quiet, its crew unaware. Elias rose from his chair, walked to the private command alcove, and unlocked a panel sealed for a decade. Inside it was a smooth black tablet, warm to the touch. On it, glowing in pale red, was the phrase, Omega Echo, Eute Ho Razid. He stared at it for a moment, then whispered, "So, it begins." A soft rain of light filtered through the upper dome of the Terran Defense Command's lunar relay hub, glinting off thousands of data streams cascading across the central command interface. Buried deep within the bedrock of Earth's moon, the bunker had no official designation, no public record, and no assigned personnel according to any known database. But every world in human space owed its safety to what happened within these walls. Commander Le Navarro sat motionless in her neural-linked command cradle, her pupils glowing faintly with interface sync pulses. She was receiving the signal, the one no one wanted to ever see. Omega Echo. Authorized. A beat of silence passed in the system, like a galaxy holding its breath. Then came the cascade. Across every hidden node, every false asteroid relay, every passive satellite buried in crusted moons and derelict hulls, Omega Echo unfurled like a secret symphony rising after decades of silence. Generators powered on beneath Martian deserts. Covert satellites rotated to new alignments in orbit around Epsilon Prime. Entire star systems that had once seemed untouched by military presence began to move dot to the outside galaxy. It looked like nothing. A few emergency broadcasts here and there, a pulse of static, a flicker in comms. But for those who knew what to watch for, it was a massive awakening. On the outer rim, the Argent Dawn floated silent in the void its frame aged, weathered, a perfect image of mediocrity. But inside, Captain Elias Rain stood before his crew, who had trained for 20 years under the illusion they were patrol officers watching mining routes. Not a single one of them had ever fired a weapon in actual combat until now. Elias's voice was low, but it carried. As of 20 minutes ago, the Arxarian Dominion has declared extermination-level action against humanity. The Council believes we are weak. The Dominion believes we are unprepared. That belief is what makes them vulnerable. A young comms officer, barely out of her academy years, swallowed hard. "Sir, are we activating the full net?" "No," Elias replied, tapping a sequence on his private console. "We are activating Sector Phantom." The bridge lights dimmed. Beneath the floor plating, a soft hum began to rise. The ship's systems, long held in stasis, began rewriting their own code. On every screen, the ship's designation updated: UTC Stealth Frigate Argent Fang. Ghost Fleet command panels lifted from walls. Consoles reshaped themselves. A hidden compartment slid open to reveal an arsenal of high-frequency weapons no alien had ever encountered. The walls themselves changed, shedding fake plating to reveal iridescent black polymer armor. Across the stars, similar transformations occurred. Cargo haulers jettisoned false containers to reveal railguns and cloaking fields. Terraforming drones split open to unleash interceptor swarms. The illusion shattered on Earth, buried beneath Antarctica. A woman moved through cold corridors lit only by amber war status lights. Fleet Admiral Jessica Morrison was already in uniform when she entered the command vault, her presence triggering biometric locks and silent alarms. "Status report," she ordered, stepping onto the command bridge. Her senior officer, General Sato, was pale. "Ma'am, the Arxarian fleet is advancing. Projected arrival in the Kepler Expanse in 26 hours. Over 7,000 warships. Casualties?" Morrison asked without looking at him. Sato hesitated. "We don't project human casualties, ma'am." "We've accounted for full victory." Morrison stopped, slowly turned. "Repeat that." "Our models say that with Phase Phantom activated, human stealth forces will have full perimeter entrapment. Predictive combat simulations give us a 99.3% success rate, with 0 human losses." The silence that followed was colder than any silence Morrison had ever known. "And if we don't strike first, then Earth burns." Morrison turned to Ward. The grand strategic map on the holoscreen stars shifting, blinking, aligning. She tapped a point far beyond the Kepler expanse where an asteroid drifted through an empty system. Activate Bastion Null. I want it operational by dawn, ma'am. That's a planetary-level deterrent. Are we broadcasting its signature? She gave him a single glance, sharp and cutting. We've been called weak for 50 years. It's time they feel the weight of the truth. Back in the Galactic Council chamber, Ambassador Thalia Reeves sat alone in her quarters. The room was quiet, too quiet. Outside her window, she could see ships from a dozen species swarming around the council station. Some carried diplomats. Others, she was sure, were already preparing for humanity's fall, but they wouldn't see it coming. She stood, removed a silver pendant from her neck, and placed it onto her desk. A soft projection shimmered upward, revealing encrypted battlefield map symbols unknown to any alien intelligence. She reached for the console. "Begin Operation Glass Veil," she said. A soft chime answered her. Authorization confirmed. Operation Glass Veil active. Fleet deception at 83%. Enemy perception remains unchanged. Thalia stared at the numbers. Everything was unfolding perfectly. But inside, beneath her cool exterior, something turned uneasily. They had never wanted this. But they would finish it flawlessly, ruthlessly, completely, because the galaxy had decided to force humanity's hand. Far beyond, in the deep reaches of black space, the Argent Fang vanished from all sensors. Slipping into Shadow Dot, it would be the first blade drawn in silence. The stars over Kepler Station 9 shimmered with the quiet rhythm of a sleeping galaxy. In the orbital lanes, human cargo ships traced their usual slow arcs. Massive freighters, rust-streaked and sluggish, crawled toward the station, their transponders broadcasting outdated registry codes. No weapons, no defenses. Just humble commerce. At least. That's what the Arxarian scouts believed. From their cloaked observation post hidden in the Kepler asteroid belt, the Arxarian observers transmitted recordings to the main fleet. Their encrypted logs showed humans scrambling and panicked cargo ships retreating from border worlds, outposts going dark, and mining colonies broadcasting emergency evacuation codes. It was exactly the kind of chaos a weak species would exhibit in the face of overwhelming force, but the Arxarian sensors could not detect what pulsed beneath the surface of that chaos. They could not hear the phantom echoes resonating across humanity's private communication lattice. They could not see the shifting of entire fleets behind solar flares and false gravitational shadows. They saw only what they were meant to see, and that would be their undoing. Captain Elias Rain stood inside the projection chamber of the Argent Fang, surrounded by tactical overlays forming a 3D lattice of the entire conflict zone. Every piece of intelligence humanity had gathered over the past 30 years glowed around him: Arxarian fleet formations, supply lines, command hierarchies, and response algorithms. He wasn't just planning a defense. He was engineering a performance. "Status of the Phantom screen?" he asked, his voice calm, almost dispassionate. His tactical officer, Lieutenant Mira Thorne, answered immediately. "Phantom units Alpha through Omega are in position. All are reporting complete cloaking. Projected entrapment success rate, 94.2%. And the bait?" Rain asked. Thorne smirked. "Performing admirably, sir. The panic broadcasts are being picked up by 3 dozen Arxarian subfleets. They believe our outer colonies are collapsing." Rain studied the spinning image of the Kepler system. "Good. Let them keep believing. But initiate Echo Mirage at 4 o'clock Earth Standard." Thorne blinked. "You want to simulate a false collapse of Earth itself?" Rain nodded. "Yes. If they think the core is falling, they'll commit everything to the final strike. And when they do, they step into the real battlefield. Meanwhile, on Earth, Deep inside Vault Trident, a facility so secret its location was only known to 5 living people. Admiral Morrison stood before an interface unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. It wasn't a screen. It was alive. A swirling lattice of AI cores, predictive engines, memory matrices, and combat probability shards wrapped the command chamber in a sphere of light and data. This was Athena, humanity's battle intelligence construct. A system capable of running 37 simultaneous galactic war scenarios, each accounting for billions of variables. Query. Morrison said. Athena's voice responded with serene clarity. Arxarian commitment projection, 89%. Probability of full fleet engagement within 18 hours, 92.4%. Optimal strike window, 6:17 to 6:25 Earth Standard. And fallback? Morrison asked. Athena dimmed. Fallback scenarios result in planetary bombardment. Casualty estimates, 3.7 billion. Unacceptable, Morrison said coldly. Prepare Bastion Null for activation. A long pause. Warning, Athena replied. Deployment of Bastion. Null will publicly reveal Category 10 weapons. Proceed? Yes, Morrison said. No more masks. Outside the bunker, the skies above Earth remained peaceful. Civilian broadcast continued as normal. Children played in orbital habitats. Traders docked in routine intervals. And far above them all, disguised within the orbital debris field, the Arkansas's Bastion and Nova Vow began to open their armored petals massive planetary defense ships, the size of small moons, blooming into readiness for the first time in their existence. On the Council Station, Ambassador Thalia Reeve walked quietly through a stone-lit corridor reserved for private delegations. She passed silent guards from the Altarian, Varathi, and Creel contingents, all of whom nodded respectfully but with uneasy eyes. The atmosphere had changed. Everyone could feel it. The human delegation had stopped protesting, stopped issuing defenses, stopped asking for help. Now they waited. And their silence was terrifying. Thalia entered her secure chamber, triggered the biometric lock, and stepped onto the polished obsidian floor of her private war room. The walls flickered alive with neural-linked maps, predictive simulations, and encrypted feeds from every node in human space. A message blinked at the top of the main screen. Glass veil 87% complete. False evacuations on schedule. Combat deception field fully operational. She stared at the data, then reached for her old pendant and clutched it tightly in her hand. Once, she had believed diplomacy alone could keep the stars from burning. But the galaxy had proven otherwise. A voice came through the comm. Ambassador Reeve, the Arxarian fleet just broadcast a final ultimatum. They demand our unconditional surrender within 12 hours or they will begin sterilization of human colonies. Should we respond? Thalia stood in silence for several seconds. Then, softly but firmly, she answered "No, let them believe we are afraid." And across the galaxy, cloaked in silence and shadow, thousands of human ships shifted position. They were not running. They were waiting. The Arxarian flagship Brood Tyrant drifted into the shadow of the gas giant Uretz, its hull bristling with organic cannons and glistening neurobiosensors. The fleet's vanguard surrounded it in a crescent formation, 7,000 ships strong. Each vessel pulsed with a dull red light, since through the Dominion's Hive command network, a centralized combat intelligence linked directly to General Kelzer's own neural core. From his command throne, half-seat, half-living organism Kelzer surveyed the data washing over his vision. Scout reports from 3 systems back showed increasing evidence of human collapse. Cracked communications. Civilian vessels overloaded and fleeing. Abandoned outposts adrift in silence. Just as we predicted, his war tactician rasped through. A double-jointed jaw. The primates are scattering. Kelzer's mandibles flared in grim pleasure. Let them run. Their panic spreads like the scent of decay. We will chase them to their cradle world and rip it apart molecule by molecule. But something tickled at the edge of his senses. He shifted slightly. The data was too clean. They collapsed too orderly. Every transmission followed a pattern. Every retreat occurred just before Arxarian arrival. He narrowed his eyes. Query Hive Net, he barked. Request verification. Are there any anomalies in human transmission decay? Analyzing, came the flat response from the hive. Hive. Moment later, a chime. Negative. No anomalies detected. Collapse proceeding as expected. But Kelzer's instincts honed. Over decades of conquest wouldn't let go of the splinter in his mind. On the outer flank of the fleet, the light freighter Sorrow's Echo tumbled through space, lights flickering. Its distress beacon screamed. Across multiple frequencies, broadcasting a repeating human plea. Please, if anyone can hear us. The Dominion is destroying everything. Please, we have no weapons. We surrender. Arxarian scout ship Zar 92 intercepted it. Target is civilian grade. Minimal armor. Scans show no weapon signatures, the Zar commander transmitted. Ward and extract survivors, came the order. They may have information. The Arxarian boarding claws gripped the freighter's airlock, splitting it open like an eggshell dot inside. The ship was empty, silent. Wrong got too clean. The moment the boarding team stepped into the corridor, the hull sealed behind them. Motion-triggered pressure plates activated a cascade of hidden systems. Auto-sentries, cloaked in optical filters, opened fire with hypersonic precision. The Arxarian squad vanished in less than 3 seconds. Before Zar 92 could react, the Sorrows. Echo itself reconfigured, its outer hull sloughing away, like old skin to reveal a matte black core vessel beneath. Designation: UTC Interceptor Wraith 2. Its cannons were already charging. It fired once. Zar 92 disintegrated into expanding gas and frozen CHITI. At the same moment, 12 similar civilian vessels across the sector activated. The illusion of helplessness shattered. And the Arxarian scouts, who had thought they were hurting prey, realized too late they were marching through a kill zone. On Earth, inside the subsurface war archive known only as the Forge, Admiral Morrison stood before the prime combat table, watching as enemy fleet projections lit up red against the star lines. Phase 1 has concluded, said her operations chief. The deception net is officially broken. Enemy response? Morrison asked. They're hesitating. We've seen a 0.7% drop in their advance rate. That's all. Morrison turned to her comms team. Transmit ghost signal Delta. The room fell deathly quiet. That phrase hadn't been uttered since the archive was built. The signal traveled through a lattice of black channels, skipping through quantum filaments, echoing into hyperspace. At that same moment, buried defense arrays began to rise from the crusts of abandoned colonies. In the rings of Charon, an artificial moon cracked open and unfolded into a fully functional orbital battle station. Ships that had drifted powerless for decades surged to life. And on the edge of the Altair Nebula, the mythical Night Veil fleet, rumored even among humans to be a ghost story, uncloaked in synchronized silence. Admiral Rain, aboard the Argent. Fang received the confirmation signal. It's time, he said. His officers were stone-faced. These weren't ordinary personnel. They had been born into silence, trained in the shadows, and raised on the promise that if war ever came, they would be its conclusion. Activate Horizon Lock. At his command, hundreds of cloaked vessels powered up interdiction fields that folded space inward, making escape impossible for any Arxarian ship in the zone. The trap was closed. Back on the Brood Tyrant, Kelsier watched as more and more scout ships stopped reporting in. 1, then 2, then 6, then 12. What is happening? He roared. A voice came from his intelligence chamber. Dominion Commander Group 9 has been lost. No distress signals. No weapon traces. They just vanished. Kelsier rose from his throne. Deploy full fleet. Defensive pattern Delta 4, and locate the source of these attacks. And then, the final blow fell. A massive human broadcast cut through all frequencies. It didn't come from a ship. It came from everywhere. From derelict satellites. From broken mining stations. From orbiting garbage. One voice. Calm. Precise. It was Ambassador Thalia Reeve. To the Arxarian Dominion, she said, "You have crossed into territory you do not understand. You are not facing the humans you saw 50 years ago. You are facing the ones who prepared." Kelsier's heart froze. "You wanted war," she continued. "Now you will remember what it cost to ask for it." And in space, the stars began to change. They were not stars. They were ships. Thousands of them. Uncloaking. Position. Ready. The stars were no longer still. From the command deck of the Brood Tyrant, General Kelsier watched in silence as one by one, cold pinpricks of light became shapes, terrible, precise, impossibly vast. Ships unlike anything recorded in Dominion. Archives began to fill the space ahead of them. They shimmered like obsidian monoliths against the void, bearing no transponders, no energy signatures, and no warning. They had been there the whole time. "Impossible," hissed the Hive liaison officer beside him. "We scanned this system 3 times. There was nothing." "There was silence," Kelsier corrected coldly. "Which is not the same." A holographic projection unfolded before him, constructed from real-time sensor data. The 300 ship, human defense formation around Kepler-4 had changed. It had grown, but not in any logical pattern. Not like Arxarian deployments, concentric, nested, disciplined. This formation had intent. It enveloped. It surrounded. It did not ask for mercy, and it did not offer warning. And still, no transmissions came. No ultimatums. Only the unbearable pressure of silence. The general paced. "What is the status of the outer scouts?" 32 groups lost. Still no telemetry. No debris fields recovered. They disappear. Kelsier flexed his claws. He had seen this before Undying. Worlds. It was the silence predators made before they struck. He turned to his communication officer. "Send a fleet-wide command. Prepare all vessels for full-spectrum assault. I want weapons online, shields at maximum. Begin active probing of the anomaly signatures ahead." "Sir, they are not anomalies anymore," came the reply. "They are warships, thousands of them. Deep, beneath Earth's crust, in the hardened core of Command Sanctum Theta." Admiral Morrison stood encircled by live 3D projections of the Kepler Theater. Her voice was quiet, focused. "Are the Arxarians fully within the containment perimeter?" "Yes, Admiral," came the reply. "The rear vanguard crossed the net boundary 8 minutes ago. They have nowhere to go." "Deploy wall protocol." "Confirmed." Along the edge of the Kepler system, hundreds of dormant satellite husks cracked open like insect shells, revealing phased interdiction arrays capable of generating hypergravity shears. Any ship attempting hyperspace jump or FTL acceleration within the zone would be pulled apart atom by atom. In space, the battlefield shrunk without anyone firing a shot. Back on the Argent Fang, Captain Elias Rain monitored the GhostNet an invisible web of surveillance drones and quantum resonance beacons. "All fleet nodes report green," Lieutenant Thorne said. Stealth net at 98.7% integrity. Targeting overlays locked. Shall we engage? Not yet, Rain said softly. His eyes traced the enemy formations. The Arxarians still moved like a dominant power, still broadcasting formation orders with arrogance, still assuming their size would protect them. Let them look longer, he said. Let the doubt take root. He tapped a small crystal embedded in the command rail. Playback Echo Sim 3. A holographic simulation bloomed across the central sphere, showing Arxarian command behavior under prolonged psychological stress. As the enemy failed to detect the source of their scout losses, as more human ships emerged without warning, as the silence pressed tighter, they would lose cohesion, and when the doubt turned to fear, the trap would snap shut. Rain's voice was quiet. I want Kelser to feel alone before he dies. On the council station, word was spreading. The Vorathi ambassador had summoned an emergency session. Rumors flew through the hall's silent human fleets, impossible weapons entire. Scout wings vanishing in zero time. Ambassador Thalia Reeve arrived calmly, flanked by no guards. She didn't need any. The chamber erupted with sound as she entered. The Krell barked questions. The Thrento rumbled warnings. Even the Altarian delegates, once steadfast allies, now looked uncertain. Ambassador Reeve, the council chair, boomed. Your government is accused of activating unregistered weapons platforms and violating multiple galactic warfare codes. What say you? She stepped into the light. I say the codes failed to stop genocide, she replied coldly. I say diplomacy was offered and spat upon. I say this war was not ours, but we will finish it. The chamber fell into stunned silence. Vorthic delegate clicked its crystalline limbs. How many ships do you command, Ambassador? Thalia tilted her head. You'll know, she said softly, when the debris stops falling. In orbit over Kepler 4, the fleet moved, one by one. The cloaked ships deactivated their veil systems, and for the first time in recorded history, the true face of Earth's Navy was revealed. Ships 3 times the size of Arxarian dreadnoughts. Warforms shaped like spears, layered in black titanium alloy. Carriers that looked like flying cities. Escort frigates outfitted with weaponry that pulsed with forbidden energy. Some bore no visible propulsion. Some hovered with no heat signature. Some didn't even seem to exist in conventional space. But they were there, and their presence collapsed every assumption the Dominion had made. Inside the brood tyrant, Kelser could no longer speak. His HiveNet connection stuttered. His crew shifted in uneased. Then the final horror. Dozens of ships bearing civilian transponder codes haulers, transports, old mining rigs began shedding their outer hulls. What lay beneath was beautiful and terrifying. Fully weaponized stealth. Cruisers, mobile railgun platforms, AI-piloted hunter drones. Vessels older than the Dominion itself, with no official records. Every shadow had been a lie. Every weakness had been a mask. On the Argent Fang, Captain Rain finally spoke. Begin the awakening. Across the system, dormant weapons charged. Quantum. Lances spun up. Mass dash driver silos unlocked. And the trap, crafted for 50 years, began to close. Kelser had fought 57 wars. He had shattered the resistance of aquatic starburn, cracked the crystalline fleets of the Vorthic reaches, and crushed 3 civilizations before they ever spoke their first words to the Council. But never had he experienced this. He stood locked in silence on the command deck of the brood tyrant, the heart of his pride, surrounded by thousands of Dominion warships. And yet, he had never felt so surrounded. Before him, space boiled. Not with energy, not with fire, with reality. From nothing came movement. Thousands of ships appeared not through warp signatures or transition bursts, but with a kind of whispered inevitability. as if the void had always belonged to them and they were simply returning home. Human ships. Not just warships. Weapons. Some resembled no known structure folded like blades sharpened through time itself. Hulls inscribed with fractal command runes designed to interfere with psionic communication. Others hovered in silence, their outlines flickering through dimensions, untouchable and yet undeniable. The Dominion's fleet system struggled to lock onto targets. Sensor drones returned static. HiveNet relays fed conflicting data. One ship appeared to be a kilometer-long battleship. The next second, it was gone, replaced by a dozen smaller vessels with identical signatures. Then one again. Then none. Kelser growled in frustration, slamming his claws against the command rail. "What is this?" A low whisper answered. Not through comms, not through sensors, but through every Dominion ship simultaneously. "You entered the storm." Inside the Argent Fang, Captain Elias Rain watched the unfolding chaos with eyes cold as winter steel. His voice was barely audible. Phase 2 complete. Begin hammerfall. From a command node buried beneath his chair, he pressed a single switch. Instantly, the second layer of the trap activated. Beneath every major Dominion vessel hidden beneath, their very formation's artificial black hole charges lit up. Not detonation devices, but anchor points. Tethers to real space, locking Dominion ships in place. The Arxarians could no longer retreat, could no longer jump, could not even turn without tearing themselves apart. And then the first volley hit. The Crimson Vow, a Terran capital-class dreadnought, opened fire with a weapon humanity had only theorized about in whispers. A temporal. Cascade beam. It didn't just slice through the Arxarian destroyer it targeted. It rewound it. The ship twisted backward in time, reverting to its state 5 minutes prior when it was already damaged from a prior engagement. But the past and present overlapped incompletely. The ship tried to exist in two realities at once. It imploded. Elsewhere, stealth cruisers fired quantum torpedoes that blinked out of detection grids and reappeared inside Dominion hulls. No impact, no warning. Just instantaneous disintegration. From within, gravitational weapons shredded formations. Gravity wells collapsed ships into spheres of compressed matter. Others were pulled apart like ash. The Dominion's disciplined advance devolved into chaos. HiveNet screamed. Command pathways began fragmenting. Orders collided with panic. Kelser's voice thundered across the emergency spectrum. Form up, recenter flanks. Deploy command beacons, but no one could answer. The beacons had been compromised minutes ago. The flank was gone. Admiral Morrison stood in silence within the Earth Sanctum's war nexus, arms crossed behind her back as reports poured in. The chamber around her shimmered with live combat displays. Ship counts, heat signatures, energy vectors. Kill ratios. One display showed the Arxarian flagship locked in a stasis field, unable to fire or flee. Estimated time to total fleet dissolution? She asked quietly. 5 minutes, Athena answered. Casualties? 0 human. She said nothing for a long moment. Broadcast to the Council, she ordered. A beacon lit. Inside the Galactic Council chamber. Dozens of species stared in disbelief at the live broadcast. What was supposed to be a massacre had reversed into something far worse. Not a battle. An execution. Dominion. Ships shattered like glass in orbit over Kepler. 4. Human vessels moved like dancers in a coordinated ballet of annihilation. There were no cries of mercy. No pleas, only silence and impact. Thalia Reeve stood slowly as holographic feeds shifted behind her, showing the scale of devastation in terrifying detail. Let history record, she said, her voice unwavering, that humanity did not start this war, but we ended it in 8 minutes. The chamber was silent. Some species were pale, others trembling. A few simply sat down, defeated in spirit. Even the Krell, the most belligerent species outside the Dominion, lowered their crests. On the edge of the battlefront, a Dominion cruiser broke ranks and fled, one of the last to try. It accelerated, engines burning, trying to reach the gravity slipstream outside the interdiction field. It never made it. A single human interceptor, no larger than a scout ship, dropped from orbit and blinked into existence just ahead of it. Interceptor didn't fire. It projected something. A simulated image of Earth surrounded by 12 fleets not yet seen. Each fleet larger than what had just destroyed the Dominion Armada. The fleeing ship powered down. On the brood tyrant, Kelzer stood shaking. His command deck was filled with the scent of failure, of burning fluid and charred nerve cables. A message blinked on his main screen. Woman's face. Ambassador Thalia Reeve, you called us vermin, she said softly, and you thought that Galaxy would not notice as you crushed our people, broke treaties, ignored the laws you helped write. Her expression didn't change. You were wrong. Kelzer stared at her for a long time. Then he fell to his knees. We surrender. And across the stars the Dominion collapsed. The flames of war had vanished, but the silence that followed was heavier than any explosion. In orbit above Kepler-4, the battlefield was still. Fragments of Arxarian ships floated in slow, tumbling arcs, some reduced to shards of carapace plating, others broken into jagged silhouettes of once proud dreadnoughts. Here and there, Dominion bioships still twitched with residual neural activity, trying to rejoin a hive net that no longer existed. It had taken 7 minutes and 42 seconds to dismantle the most feared military in the galaxy. The humans had not chased glory. They had turned annihilation into an art form. Admiral Jessica Morrison stood on the central platform of Command Sanctum Theta, watching as battle telemetry finalized. The lights of the war nexus dimmed, replaced by shimmering memorial overlays, each enemy vessel cataloged, each strike recorded with clinical precision. Report, she said, her voice steel cold. Athena's voice echoed softly. Final Dominion. Fleet loss, 1,989 vessels. Human fleet status, all units operational. No structural losses, 0 casualties. Morrison nodded. Then, almost imperceptibly, her jaw clenched. It was too easy. Her operations chief, General Sato, turned, Admiral? They never had a chance. And they thought they did. We played our part too well. You're concerned about perception. I'm concerned, she said, turning toward him, about the day someone else tries to follow the path the Dominion did, and fails in a more messy fashion. She stepped forward. Send a secure transmission to Fleet Commands 1 through 9. Initiate Veil Reformation. Begin cloaking all reserve fleets. Only the surface strength remains visible to the galaxy. Yes, Admiral. Morrison's gaze returned to the Hulla projection of Kepler-4. We showed them too much. She whispered on the Galactic Council station. The chamber was no longer full of outrage, it was full of awe. Ambassadors, who once saw Earth as a backwater colony, now stood in stunned reverence. The Vorthic, crystalline and ancient, lowered their ceremonial staffs in respect. The Altarians offered silence. Even the Krell, aggressive and prideful, had not spoken in over an hour. The entire council had just watched a fleet thought, to be laughably small, erase the Arxarian Dominion from the stars. Not repel, not resist. Erased. At the center of it all, Ambassador Thalia Reeve stood with perfect posture, a slight gleam of sweat across her brow, though her expression remained unshaken. I now stand to formally announce the end of hostilities, she said calmly. The Arxarian government has surrendered unconditionally. Their remaining planetary assets have requested human oversight to ensure their compliance with galactic law. Who will enforce that? Someone called out. Thalia turned toward the voice. It was the ambassador of the Janari Ascendancy, a species once known for its disdain of Earth. Reeve smiled faintly. We will, if needed. The Janari said nothing. More. Silence stretched again until the Vorthic delegate leaned forward, chimes ringing faintly from his movements. Ambassador. How long? Excuse me? How long, he repeated, have your people been preparing for this moment? She held his gaze. 53 years, she said, not because we wanted to fight, but because we knew someone eventually would. Make us. The words hung in the air like a verdict. Meanwhile, in a chamber beneath the Earth's polar crust, Captain Ilias Rain stood in a black hall lit only by shimmering threads of light. The Argent Fang had returned to its hangar, a hollowed out Dyson fragment disguised as an asteroid field near Neptune. Around him, officers from Stealth Fleet's Ghost, Night Vale, and Phantom gathered. They had no medals, no fanfare, only the knowledge that they had fulfilled their purpose. Rain raised a glass of nutrient crystal to his lips, then set it down without drinking. Across from him, Commander Mira Thorne spoke in a low voice. We didn't just destroy a fleet. We rewrote the rules of engagement for the galaxy. They weren't ready, Rain replied. No, but we were. A beat. She turned to him, eyes uncertain. Do you think they'll ever trust us now? No, Rain answered. And that's the point. Fear is a better deterrent than trust when the next Dominion rises. He picked up a sealed datapad and handed it to her. What's this? She asked. Fleet movement orders. We're being repositioned. To where? Everywhere. Aboard the Dominion command ship wreckage still drifting in the Kepler, system search teams retrieved General Kelser. He was half conscious. Armor fused to his chitin, eyes unfocused. A human medic crouched beside him, administering a stabilizer. Kelser groaned, barely audible. Why didn't you warn us? The medic looked down, pity in her eyes. We did, she whispered. You didn't listen. 3 days later, Thalia Reeve stood before the reassembled council, now larger than ever, filled with leaders from unaffiliated worlds who had come just to witness humanity's first address as the undisputed power in the galaxy. She wore a silver uniform stitched with black threading, no rank, no title, just presence. Let us be clear, she began. Humanity does not seek conquest. We do not desire dominion. We remember our history far too well for that. She looked across the chamber. But we have learned one thing. Peace is not the absence of war. It is the presence of strength, and the willingness to wield it when the line is crossed. A quiet nod rippled through the hall. The age of underestimation is over, she said, and the age of consequence has begun. The lights dimmed as her speech concluded, but in corners of the galaxy, on distant moons and forgotten systems, different kind of silence settled, because every species now had to ask one question. If Earth had shown them this much, what were they still hiding? The stars over the council station no longer shimmered with idle curiosity. Now they stared back like 1,000 wary eyes. A week had passed since the annihilation of the Arxarian fleet over Kepler. 4. But time could not erase what had been burned into the collective memory of the galaxy. Not the destruction, not the silence, and certainly not the moment every representative realized that Earth had deceived them all for decades and done it perfectly. Ambassador Thalia Reeve stood in a dimly lit corridor behind the Grand Forum, flanked by nothing but echoing silence. She was waiting for someone, not another ambassador, not a human officer, someone else. From the shadows emerged a being cloaked in whispering iridescent mist. 4 arms, no mouth. Eyes like polished obsidian, Ambassador Vailtran of the Ashari. Silent Compact, one of the few species so elusive, the galaxy had forgotten they still held seats in the council. You did not warn us. The being's thoughts arrived directly in Thalia's mind, laced with bitter stillness. You would not have believed us if we had, she replied. No one did, Vailtran agreed. And now they wonder what else you hide. We hide enough to keep the peace, Thalia answered coolly, or to wage a better war. The alien whispered Dot across the galaxy. Changes began like ripples in a poisoned ocean, the Krull Syndicate long known for their piracy and unprovoked. Border aggression suddenly pulled every raiding ship back behind their homeworld's shields. The Soryari Alliance, which had been on the verge of declaring war against two neighboring systems, halted their troop deployments and began requesting cultural exchange with Earth. Even the unaligned Vexari traders, famous for their neutrality, began requesting protection contracts from the United Terran Coalition. Fear was not just in the air. It had become currency. At Earth's secure diplomatic command center in Geneva Dome, Admiral Jessica Morrison stood before a round table of military strategists, sociologists, and civil diplomacy advisors. The lights were low. No journalists were permitted. No recordings. The question on the table wasn't what next. It was, did we go too far? Fleet Command General Marcus Lee spoke first. The operation was perfect. We've neutralized the most imminent threat to human space without a single loss. And we've made ourselves a target to every species too proud to admit we terrify them, countered Dr. Cassandra Vance, a civilian strategist who had once authored The Future of Silent Power, a book arguing against exactly what had just happened. You wanted peace, Lee snapped. You got it. At what cost? She asked. Morrison raised a hand, silencing them both. Her voice was calm. This was always going to happen. The moment we revealed our strength, they would fear us. But we didn't do this for dominance. We did it for survival. And survival, Cassandra murmured, is just another word for conquest when you're the biggest voice in the room. On the moons of Yolnax, far beyond the border of explored space, a secret meeting convened. Representatives from four major powers, Altarian, Varathi, Janari, and the Rek Thella, Accord, gathered in silence. Projected above them was a slow-motion replay of the Argent, Fang destroying 4 Dominion cruisers in a span of 1.7 seconds. That wasn't a battle, said one Janari official. That was extinction at the press of a button. They claim restraint, said a Varathi. They also claim they only used 1/3 of their actual fleet, added the Altarian. The Rek Felon stood, his voice heavy. They played us for 50 years, smiled at our tables, traded with our merchants, studied our weaknesses. So what do we do now? The chamber fell quiet. Then came a whisper. We prepare. For war? No, came the reply. For what happens, when Temford happens. They no longer ask for permission. Meanwhile, in low Earth orbit, a civilian transport ship drifted toward the side of an artificial satellite. No one could see unless they already knew it existed. The Sanctum Arc. Officially, it was a deep space research array. In reality, it was a vault. Inside, beyond kilometers of shielding, dozens of technologies were housed, each one considered too dangerous to ever be used. Project Parallax, Project Horizon Break, the Reclaimer device, and in the center, something older than Earth's modern age itself, a weapon built not to kill, but to undo. Morrison stood in front of it, hands clasped behind her back. Rain joined her. This is the only one left, he said quietly. It was supposed to be dismantled, she replied. We were supposed to be left alone. He countered. A pause. Then Morrison spoke what neither of them had dared say aloud until now. If they come for us next time, it won't be a fleet, it will be all of them. Then we don't let there be a next time. Morrison's eyes narrowed, then let them understand one final truth. She turned toward the observation deck, watching Earth spin slowly below. Humanity didn't survive because we were strong. We survived because we learned how to disappear in plain sight and still draw blood. In the far reaches of space, near the edge of the galactic halo, an unmanned probe passed through a system previously unreachable due to Arxarian suppression. It relayed an image, a fleet, 12 times larger than what humanity had deployed at. Kepler 4. Not human. Not Dominion. Not known. And dormant. Until now. As the probe passed within range, a signal pulsed from the core of the fleet. A response. It was not in any known language, but its meaning was clear. We saw what you did. We are awake now. In the silence beyond mapped space, past the outer rim drift and through the blind void of the Maelstrom Veil, a shape stirred where no star had burned for 1 billion years. It had no name in council records, no orbiting satellites, no trade routes. It wasn't supposed to be there. And yet it was. Thousands of kilometers across, its outer hull resembled obsidian glacier, flawless, jagged, and silent. Lights pulsed under its surface, not like energy but like thought. At its center, a yawning aperture opened, revealing an interior not bound by physical law, where distance stretched and folded, where matter obeyed intelligence instead of gravity. And from within that vast, dreaming geometry, it watched. It had watched the Kepler 4 massacre. It had watched the Dominion collapse. And now it moved. Back on Earth, Admiral Jessica Morrison stood in the War Sanctum sealed archive chamber. The room was quiet, too quiet for her liking. Across the room, a black terminal blinked softly, disconnected from every secure grid. It hadn't lit up in 1,172 days. Until now. Her aide approached nervously. "Ma'am, you asked to be notified if Vault Aegis activated." She turned slowly. "It's active?" "Yes. Partial decryption underway. Origin point is ... unknown. No matching signal type in any of our linguistic matrices." Morrison stepped forward and placed her hand on the panel. The moment she did, the terminal stopped blinking and began to speak, not in a voice, but in pulses, waves of harmonic data translated into meaning by the system's most ancient interpreter core. "See you. We see what you have become. The false war ends. The real one begins." Morrison blinked once and quietly muttered, "God help us." In the council chamber, Ambassador Thalia Reeve addressed an emergency summit, one hastily convened after multiple species detected the same anomaly. A non-native fleet emerging near the shattered Halo Nebula. She wore her usual calm expression, but her hands trembled slightly behind her datapad. Approximately 72 hours ago, she began, an unmanned probe dispatched beyond Arxarian territory returned a short transmission. In it, we see the emergence of a fleet at least 12 times the scale of what was deployed at Kepler 4. It did not identify itself. It did not respond to hails. It did not fire. But it did one thing. It listened. The image played above them. An impossibly vast ring of ships drifting in perfect silence. No visible engines. No known drive signatures. Many were shaped like ancient Terran symbology spirals, fractals, or eye-like ovals. They weren't designed for intimidation. They were designed to observe. The Vorthic ambassador stood. "Is this a reaction to the war?" Thalia nodded. "We believe so, but we don't believe it's a native species. Our linguists have confirmed that the signal they sent is older than any council language, possibly millions of years older." Gasps rippled through the chamber. "The signal was simple," she continued, "but the implications are not." She tapped the pad. The words appeared in a dozen languages. "We observe, we record, we do not interfere. Until balance is broken, balance has been broken. We are coming. The chamber fell silent on the Argent Fang. Captain Elias Rain reviewed classified recon footage of the anomaly. Next to him, Commander Mira Thorne watched with unreadable eyes. "That's not a fleet," she said. "It's a judgment." Rain said nothing. "We just proved we're the apex predator," she added. "And something out there watched us do it." Rain finally looked away from the display. "We poked the galaxy with a sharp stick," he said. But the galaxy just opened one eye and it wasn't asleep. In Geneva, Morrison convened a midnight meeting with the Prime Minister and 12 undisclosed security advisors. "There is no war coming," she told them. "There is a correction coming." "Clarify," the Prime Minister said. "We escalated the scale of conflict in this galaxy. We upended millennia of balance. We taught the other species not just to fear us, but to fear that any one civilization could rise to our level overnight." She paced slowly. "And something else out there doesn't like imbalance, doesn't like disruptions. It waded through empires, through extinction-level events. It did not speak until now." The Prime Minister was pale. "So we triggered them? We woke them." In the depths of Jupiter's shadow, hidden within a gas-locked prison known only as Black Vault Epsilon, one of Earth's few surviving alien prisoners stirred. Vas Kirill, former Dominion Prophet Class Warseer, pressed his clawed hands against the transparent cell. He had watched the destruction of his fleet. He had felt the change ripple through space. And now he laughed, until blood came from his nostrils and his mind began to fray. "The Watchers have risen," he croaked. "The balance wakes. Your power was too much. Your silence too long." He looked directly into the security cam. "You made the stars notice you. Now they will weigh you." The next day, 3 human stealth ships, Phantom Arrow, Karen's Call, and Veilfire entered the outer edge of the Maelstrom Veil, attempting to scan the approaching fleet. Only one made it back. The footage it returned was a transmission, looped from the heart of the object. It was not an attack. It was a mirror. Dozens of holographic projections displayed human ships, human faces, human history spanning from the invention of fire to the moment Admiral Morrison gave the command at Kepler 4. Every weapon test. Every deployment, every lie. The loop ended with one final message: "You are not the first to rise. You are the first to rise again. Explain yourselves." Admiral Morrison stood in her office, staring out at the blue curve of Earth. The stars felt different now, heavy, too quiet. A single message was prepared to be sent. Humanity's answer. She hadn't sent it yet. She looked down at the question, blinking on the secure terminal. "You built in silence. You killed without warning. Is this your nature?" She closed her eyes. And whispered, "No, but it's what we became when you left us alone." She pressed send. Far beyond the edge of known space, the Watchers received the reply, and for the first time in their long cosmic memory, they began moving. The void beyond the galactic rim churned. Where once there had been cold silence and dead star husks, now motion unfolded, slow, vast, deliberate. The Watchers, long dormant, began to emerge from their cradle. First came the Sentinels, towering constructs of light and obsidian alloy, each the size of a small moon, gliding effortlessly through space without propulsion. They bore no weapons, yet gravity bent around them. Reality tensed in their wake. Then came the Oracles, shapeless, drifting clouds of shimmering data, each composed of ancient encoded languages, half-thoughts, memories layered over time. They murmured fragments of long-dead civilizations into the cosmic wind. And finally, the JUDICATO, our. Had no form that fit into a sensor array. To the human mind, it appeared differently each time. To Admiral Morrison aboard Earth's War Nexus, it appeared as a child, unblinking, standing barefoot. In the center of her private strategy chamber. Her officers saw nothing. The room's sensors recorded no mass, no presence, yet her every neural implant screamed in alarm. Morrison stood slowly. The child figure tilted its head. Its voice echoed in a dozen languages at once, whispering in the deepest part of her mind. You rose too soon. I rose when I had to, Morrison replied. You hid too well. We hid to survive. You killed without pause. They would have erased us. The child blinked once slowly. That is always the answer. Survival, justification, righteousness, and then comes the ruin. She stared at it. We are not here to conquer, she said. We are here to end the cycle. A pause. So were we. On the council station, emergency summits fractured into panic. Entire governments withdrew from alliances. The Krell announced an immediate arms race. The Jannari sealed their borders with quantum mines. The Altarians begged for mutual defense treaties. Thalia Reeve, calm as ever, watched the diplomatic body descend into disorder, not from war, but from something worse. Anticipation. In the Chambers Center, a projection floated real-time footage of the Watcher fleet moving through the Veil. 12,000 structures. Not one weapon activated. Not one message sent, and yet no species dared to fire. Reeve stepped up to the dais. Her voice was steady, but the air around her was electric. You're asking the wrong question, she said. You're asking if the Watchers come to judge us. You're asking if humanity provoked something ancient. She leaned forward. The real question is, what will we show them next? In orbit around Earth, the Argent Fang hovered above the skyline like a phantom moon. Captain Elias Rain sat alone in the dim glow of the ship's sanctuary deck. Gazing through reinforced glass at the stars beyond, he had seen the files. Heard the return signal. He knew what they were dealing with. Commander Mira Thorne entered. Silently behind him. They want us to speak again, she said. The Watchers are waiting. What do we say? Rain asked. Thorne sat beside him. The truth? He shook his head. No, he said finally. Something better. And so it was that humanity sent a final transmission, not from the depths of a war vault, not from the Admiralty, not from a political chamber, but from a child. 9-year-old Alia Moreno sat at a console inside the Interstellar Harmony Museum in Geneva. The feed was live. She had been chosen not because of what she knew, but because of what she believed. The message was simple. She looked into the camera and smiled. Hi, she said. We didn't mean to scare anyone. We were just trying to be safe. But if you're watching, I hope you want to be friends. We have a lot of stories. Some are sad. Some are beautiful. She lifted a small hand-drawn picture of Earth surrounded by a dozen other planets with little stick figure beings holding hands. We don't want to be the biggest, just the kindest. We learned to be strong so we could protect things, not break them. She leaned in and whispered, and if you still want to know what we are, come ask. The transmission ended. 3 hours later, the Watchers stopped. They did not land, they did not fire, but they changed course and vanished slowly, silently back into the drift beyond the veil. No words, no judgment, only understanding. Weeks passed. Then months. The galaxy held its breath. And nothing happened. No retaliation, no declaration, just peace. Not from fear, but from realignment. Galaxies that once preyed upon each other began forming. Defensive pacts, trade networks reopened. Science treaties were signed. The old war economies began to collapse, not because Earth demanded it, but because Earth had reminded the stars that strength, when wielded with mercy, is the most terrifying and beautiful thing of all. On the balcony of her private quarters, Ambassador Thalia Reeve looked out at the stars. Jessica Morrison joined her. dressed not in uniform but in the quiet dignity of someone who no longer had anything left to prove. "Think they'll come back?" Thalia asked. "They never left," Morrison said. A pause. "Do you regret showing them what we could do?" Morrison sipped her tea. "No, but I regret that it was necessary." They stood in silence for a moment, then Thalia smiled faintly. "What now?" Morrison looked up at the stars. "Now," she said, "we make sure we deserve the peace we bled to earn." In a quiet corner of a quiet world, a child named Alia played with a small robotic bird. She looked up, pointed at the sky, and whispered to no one in particular, "We saw you too."